Well, it's going to be a good one. Dateline is on Friday with an all-new 2-hour episode, and it's a blockbuster. The first ever television interview with the convicted killer, Lori Vallow Daybell, known as Mommy Doomsday. She is serving life without parole for, among other crimes, the murders of her 2 children in Idaho. She's now in an Arizona jail awaiting another murder trial. Joining me now is Dateline correspondent Keith Morrison, who sat face to face with Lori and has more on this fascinating interview. Hi, Keith. I know you've been keeping up with the story for a while now. Do you remember the first time you first heard about this case?
Yeah, that was 5 years ago. Very beginning of the year 2020, when we understood that the authorities were looking for Chad and Lori, and that they believed they were in Hawaii. So we hightailed it over to Hawaii and started looking around the island of Kauai, as were the police, and eventually there they were.
Wow. So I know that for a while now, like we said, you've been covering the story. We have as well. I'm sure you've reached out to Lori several times to have an interview. Is that correct?
This has been a kind of a long-running conversation, as much as you can have a conversation with somebody who's in prison over emails, that sort of thing, text messages. And some of the people I work with have been particularly good at arranging this interview, which I wanted for quite some time. And then it turned out that she wanted to talk to me. And so the two of us got together. However, it turned out that she had altogether different hopes for this interview than I did.
Interesting. So she has never spoken with the press this far as we've been covering this case. Why do you think she decided to talk to you now?
Why now? I think probably because she has a trial coming up. She is being tried with the murder of her husband, Charles Vallow. Maybe she just wants to get a story out there that will become the kind of story that people are prepared to look at as an alternative theory when they're looking at what happened to Charles, when they look at what happened to the children. She seems to believe, and I think she actually does believe, that she and Chad will be exonerated at some point. She claims that she went to heaven and saw that happening. So we'll wait and see.
Interesting.
I kind of doubt that that'll happen, to say the least. But the conversation with her was, boy, that was about the strangest interview ever. Wacky and going in all kinds of different rabbit holes. She was, by turns, aggressive and flirtatious and seemed angry sometimes and funny other times, and trying to make jokes. It was really exhausting by the time it was done.
Wow. And I can't imagine what that was like for you, especially after covering this story for the past 5 years, and then you finally get to sit down with her. Whenever this interview was scheduled, what did that feel like for you?
I was delighted, and of course I over-prepared because there were so many things I wanted to ask her about. But then trying to get any questions in edgewise became a very difficult situation. She had something she wanted to say. She was determined to fill the entire 90 minutes we were given with a long, shaggy dog tail that was going to lead up to the notion. Well, I'll let you see our program to see what her idea was. It was not possible for a wide variety of reasons because investigators had determined that it simply couldn't have happened. Her son knows it didn't happen, and she tried it out on him too. But that's what she wanted to do. And we, of course, had a bunch of questions about what actually happened and tried to get her to answer them. So that's where some of the I guess you could call it fireworks occurred. I don't know if I'd call it fireworks as opposed to a kind of, she has a way with a sarcastic retort, which I suspect she's used on a lot of men in the past. And that might explain why she had, 5 husbands?
Wow. Well, as far as whenever you were going into the interview, is this something that you expected from her? Although you haven't interviewed with her, I'm sure covering the story for a while, you've gotten to know a little bit about how she acts, probably. So what were your expectations going into this interview?
I thought she'd be feisty, but she was just feistier than I expected she would be by quite a long stretch. It was probably the strangest interview I've ever done.
Wow. Well, you've talked to a lot of people in this case, and including Colby. How is he handling all of this?
Poor Colby. Colby has been trying to cope and put his life together. He is a mature young man who is working at making a good family life. He has 3 kids now. He's married happily and working on a career. But so he wanted to talk to his mother to get some answers to questions he's had all along, same kind of questions I had. And she spun out this tale for him, and he, of course, didn't believe it for a moment, and was deeply hurt that she would try to make the claims she made. And he has now cut off all contact with her and has told her that she will never see her grandchildren. So that's where that relationship stands now.
Well, for those who don't know, Colby is her son. And so what do you think was the biggest takeaway from your conversation with him? Do you think it was just that hurt?
It was hurt. He was not really surprised that she would come up with such a story. But I think that he thought there was at least a chance that because the 2 of them are the only people left in that family. His siblings are dead, the siblings who he really adored. The stepfather, who was the only real father that he knew in his life, the only father figure, that is. The idea that they are all gone, except for the 2 of them, made him think that maybe she would, tell him the truth. They had been very close when he was young, but she didn't. And I think he was a combination of angry and hurt and upset at the way she was besmirching the legacy of the other children, particularly Tylee, her daughter.
Mm. Well, as far as you being a journalist and having covered this story for a while now, you're on the other side of this interview. What are your thoughts now that that is over? And do you think that this interview was able to bring more truth to the situation?
I'll let the viewers decide about that. I know that if I was given an opportunity to talk to her again, I think I would. It was not, it was a conversation, quite frankly, I enjoyed. It was like riding an out of control jet ski or something, or a horse that didn't want to be tamed. I mean, she was just something that was pretty nutty, but therefore, for somebody like me, it made for an interesting day.
Well, as far as the Dateline episode that's airing and what people can expect from that, what do you think is going to be the most fascinating part of it all?
Her attitude, her behavior, the way she approaches all of this, and the fact that the way she describes her otherworldly beliefs. We didn't wallow in that for too long because they kind of would eat you all up in it a little bit. They're pretty out there. But just getting a sense of where her head is, I think, will help people understand the story a little better. And it's one of the questions that leads me to is that the law has a way of considering whether somebody is sane enough for trial or not. And though Lori is sane enough that she can be her own attorney and is smart, for heaven's sake. She's got a brain, but she's pretty delusional, and I don't know whether the law takes that into account or not. Perhaps it should.
Well, thank you so much, Keith. I have so many more questions for you, but I'm just so excited to be able to see this Dateline and see what came out of that conversation. So once again, thank you thank you for your dedication to this story, but also just meeting with us today to be able to talk about it.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.